Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the formal start of the 2021-2022 academic year here in the Hingham Public Schools. We're incredibly excited to see you all back in person. It has been entirely too long since we have been gathered together as an educational community, and we look forward to launching what promises to be an exciting and engaging academic year. To begin the program, I would like to introduce the chair of the Hingham School Committee, Ms. Carrie Nee, to deliver a welcome on behalf of the school committee. Chairperson Nee.
Hi everyone, my name is Carrie Nee, and on behalf of the school committee, welcome back. I hope you all enjoyed some time off, well-deserved time off this summer, and had a chance to disconnect. I'm joined here today by my fellow school committee members, Michelle Eyre, Jen Benham, Ness Carenti, and Liza O'Reilly. Carlos De Silva and Tim Dempsey would love to have joined, but Carlos is working and Tim is now back at his job as an educator in the Somerville Public Schools, so they send their regards. So I have to be honest, I've kind of been struggling about what to say to you as we head into our third school year impacted by a global pandemic. To say this has been challenging is a massive understatement. We're living through one of the most difficult times in recent history. In the past year and a half, teachers, students, and families have adapted to abrupt changes in the way education is delivered. In addition to the pandemic, we also face some challenges unique to Hingham in the form of leadership changes, building projects, and at times, the stresses of the pandemic did not bring out the best in our community. But to quote Maya Angelou, you may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. Despite all of the challenging events over the past 17 months, you Hingham teachers were not reduced by them. As you always do, you focused on your students and you found ways to make it work so that you could connect with your kids and safely deliver a high-quality education. On behalf of the committee, I want you all to know that we all saw that and are incredibly grateful for all that you do. We saw an emphasis on kindness and community for our students. We saw the rapid adoption of technology in our schools as you embrace new ways of reaching students. We saw creativity as you moved lessons into unfamiliar spaces and outside so students could safely engage with their teachers and each other. You maintained traditions such as Spirit Week, Booth Day, the Physics Olympics, the Foster Talent Show, the One Book, One School, One Community initiative, the Andrew Warhoftig Catching Kindness Awards at the high school, and the Citizenship Awards at the middle school, among many others. These traditions, along with new events, allowed our students to stay engaged and kept our school community united during these times. We do have work to do. Over the next year, we'll be seeking a permanent superintendent and to permanently fill 3 elementary principal roles. We'll be implementing action steps from our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion initiative, and we'll also be working to develop a strategic plan for the district so that we can continue to provide an excellent education. More importantly, we have a chance to reevaluate our priorities. We can decide where we should focus our time and energy. What do we care about? How can we repair and strengthen relationships that may have been strained by the stresses of the pandemic? We have some challenges, but we are recognized as an exceptionally strong school district with talented teachers. Most recently, the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education recognized Chrissy O'Connor as the Massachusetts 2021 History Teacher of the Year. We are a strong district, and you are the heart and soul of it. You have chosen to take adversity of the past year and a half and use it to grow. And for that, we are extremely proud of you and grateful to you for doing that. We want you to know that the school committee fully supports you. While we sometimes get distracted by other issues before us, we hope you know that we always see you and your work. And we are incredibly grateful for all you do for Hingham students. Thank you again for everything, and have a wonderful school year.
Thank you, Chairperson Nee. I'd now like to introduce Ms. June Gustafson to deliver a welcome address from the Hingham Education Association.
Convocation greetings. Good morning to our central office, building and department administrators, school committee members, and other elected officials, guests, and the warmest of welcome to all our educators, but especially our newest educators, and including our new interim superintendent, Dr. Gary Maestas. We are happy that you have chosen Hingham to begin or continue your careers. Would all new educators stand up and be recognized, please? Come on. I also want to introduce the Hingham Education Association Executive Board. Please stand as I introduce you. Our Vice President nominee, Jacqueline Beaupre. Treasurer and Membership Chair Megan Melanson. Our Secretary Bev Vernon. Our Professional Rights and Responsibility Chair Wes Hutchinson. Our Negotiations Chair Tom Melanson. Our Scholarship and Lottery Chair Chelsea Vangel. Our Plymouth County Education Association representatives Paula Flanagan and Jess Matthews. Our Financial and Retirement Chair Tracy Blake. Our representative to the Hingham Education Foundation Mallory Lynn. Our building representatives, starting with Hingham High School, Zach Bagan, Kara Roth, and Ron Woolley. Our middle school representatives, Jen Gonzalez and Ashley Baxter. Our East representative, Alice Jordan. Our Foster representatives, Heather Anderson and Sarah Vogel. Our representative from Plymouth River, Julie Harrington. Our South building reps, Maura Baxter and Shannon Gill. These officers, in addition to our fabulous mentors, can help answer questions, both large and small. Every year, I struggle with these remarks. Public speaking, especially in front of people that I hold in such high esteem, is daunting. In fact, I want to take a moment to recognize the best of the best. Please take a minute to acknowledge our newly minted Social Studies Teacher of the Year, Chrissy O'Connor. And these are for you. Oops. As a district, we're in the midst of great change, be it leadership, educator retirements, new mandates, new hires, or curriculum. These changes impact us, all of us. For me, the big change is my new friend, Mr. Lip. Not a fat lip, but Mr. Lip. As we adapt and change the social studies curriculum this year, I will now be teaching geography during this upcoming term. Mr. Lip is an acronym to remember the 5 themes of geography. And since I tell my students and families all the time that the best way of discovering your mastery is teaching. So I frame my remarks around Mr. Lip, although I'm going to take them a little bit out of order. L is for location, which there are 2 types of location. Relative, Hingham is a town southeast of Boston, and absolute location, which are the latitude and longitude coordinates. Hingham is 42.2 degrees north and 70.5 degrees west. Our east corresponding longitude would put us somewhere in Uzbekistan, while our latitude is shared with Jamestown, New York, the home of Lucille Ball, the comedy and TV production genius. Did you know she produced the original Star Trek series? Beam me up, Scotty. This same latitude is shared by Chicago, the home of my youngest son, an aspiring filmmaker and former student of the fabulous Mrs. Fish, as well as the latitude of Plymouth, Massachusetts, the former district of Dr. Maestas. 42 degrees west is great indeed. Region is next. What forms and changes in a particular region? Our district is known as one of the best performing districts in our region. Some questions to ask ourselves. What formation do we want in our schools and our classrooms to maintain our standards of excellence? More importantly, what changes do we want to bring about in ourselves and our students? How can we adapt to change, embrace change? Place, physical and human characteristics. Well, you're all gorgeous, but beyond that, you are amazing, dedicated, knowledgeable, and that's our story of place, solid and excellent characteristics. The movement in Mr. Lip is the M in Mr. Lip. Hey, grade 7 colleagues, how am I doing so far with this? Okay? All right. If last year is any indication, moving from one learning modality to another is our forte. With change and growth, movement is necessary. It allows humans to adapt to the planet, and it allows us educators and our students to learn, grow, adapt, and become transformed. And lastly, human interaction. Every year we interact with our very human students and with each other. A fellow educator pointed out to me yesterday that one of the security questions for website passwords is the name of your favorite teacher. Will yours be the name of that the student remembers and uses to answer that question? Our interactions with our students are the very reason our students may come to school. May these interactions, even the difficult ones, be filled with positivity, grace, and light. We've got this. Thank you.
We will have another welcome from our new interim superintendent, Dr. Gary Maestas, after our keynote address. So I want to sort of set up the conversation that we're about to have with Dr. Darnisa Amante-Jackson. You may recall, those that were here, when I stood in front of you in the fall of 2019, we spoke about launching important work to understand the extent to which our organization provided equal opportunity to all members of our community. It's inherent in our district mission. The mission of the Hingham Public Schools is to provide challenging and comprehensive educational programs in a safe, supportive environment, enabling all students to develop the knowledge and skills necessary for success as local and global citizens. We worked through that academic year to define educational equity. It is the shared responsibility of all members of our school community to address the opportunity gaps that exist within our society and impact our students' ability to reach their full potential. But what does it mean when we get there? What does it look like? Our vision of equity is that regardless of student background, experience, and knowledge, our students will be provided opportunities and resources to develop socially, emotionally, and academically in a safe, supportive, enriching, and bias-free environment. The most essential question that we asked ourselves last year as the equity team began its deep dive into our district operations was why? Why bother? Why get into this? Why touch such a challenging topic? The reality is a diverse, equitable, welcoming, and inclusive community is central to our mission. And we know that varied perspectives generate better ideas to solve complex problems of a rapidly changing, increasingly interconnected world. Nothing made that more clear than the COVID pandemic. We are interconnected. We believe all members of our community, students, parents, guardians, caregivers, faculty, and staff, deserve the right to be fully seen, authenticated, and affirmed. This sense of belonging is a basic human need, which must be met in order for any member of our organization to reach their full potential. We also recognize that each member of our community has different needs, experiences, and opportunities, and by exploring these differences, we gain understanding, compassion, and empathy for each other. Sitting among you today are members of the district's Equity and Inclusion Working Group. Formed in 2019, this group was charged with overseeing a comprehensive audit of the district's operational programming. The purpose was to inform our planning for this academic year for year one implementation, which will begin in just a few minutes. Here are the members of the team from last year. Last year, the equity team conducted a comprehensive audit across 12 dimensions of resource equity. We were looking at teaching quality and diversity, empowering a rigorous curriculum, instructional time and allocation, etc. The other thing that the team engaged in were a series of courageous conversations with people in affinity groups, where they were able to talk openly and vulnerably about what it is like to go to school, to work, or to live in this community. Last year, we focused on 4 major areas of our operations. We focused on empowering and rigorous content, and we were curious the extent to which all students have access to upper level and advanced courses. We looked at instructional time and attention, the extent to which all students receive additional support in the areas in which they need it. We looked at student supports and intervention, the extent to which all students have the opportunity to be evaluated in a bias-free environment. And finally, through the Courageous Conversation series, we asked ourselves whether we were actually looking at the right areas relative to district operation. What were the areas that we were focusing on, were they what people were experiencing and living, and how can we better adapt to be more responsive to the people within our organization, in our community. I won't get in too much detail here, but I want to share with you the overarching results of the audit and outline for you the action steps that we'll be undertaking this year to begin our work. First, in the area of empowering a rigorous curriculum. Again, the question here was, do all students have access to upper level and advanced courses at the secondary level? The answer was, they do, but in profoundly different proportions to each other. On this slide, what you'll notice is English is in blue, social studies red, science yellow, math in green. And across the bottom, we looked at the enrollment of all students in advanced courses, females versus males, African American, Asian Pacific Islander, Caucasian, METCO, active IEP, previous IEP, no IEP, 504, and no 504. What we found was profound variability of the extent to which students engage in upper level and advanced courses. This shows the same graph, but in percentage form, so you can have some sense of engagement across these groups. Now that we've found the data, the question becomes, what do we do with it? Well, first and foremost, this year will be working at the secondary level with your department directors and your principals to actually engage with this data, to look at it deeply and carefully, and to make hypotheses around why we're seeing the patterns that we're seeing, and what can we do as a district to change these patterns, to increase the opportunity, and to allow more students to engage at a higher level and deeper into the content. We're making no assumptions of what the outcome will be. The reality is, you as our faculty, we're hoping to use your experiences, your feedback, and your perceptions of these patterns to identify areas for growth as we look at the 2022 and 2023 academic year. The other area we looked at was instructional time and attention. The reality here is we knew prior to the audit that not all students have equal access to academic supports in areas in which they need support. Therein lies the launch of our academic intervention tiered system of support. We are bringing, the idea here is across the K-8 model, we are bringing in specialist teachers, newly revised interventionist roles to plan targeted supports and intervention to any student who might require it. To fully actualize this tiered model, we know that it will take the interconnection of both academic supports as well as social and emotional supports, particularly this fall as we return from what arguably has been the most difficult 18 months of our existence. The third area was student supports and interventions. What we found was that Black males are 4 times more likely than any other peer group to be found eligible under IDEA in the area of specific learning disability. The qualitative review revealed a need to address known bias in existing tools that we use every day in eligibility determinations. And we also understand that DESE is working with us in partnership to address these areas of disproportionality. Dr. Vinnis will be working with her team this year to enhance and expand assessment skill to ensure these known biases are controlled for. And finally, through our Courageous Conversation series, what we found was striking. What we heard consistently from every member who engaged, every group rather, who we engaged with through the Courageous Conversation series, was they all felt a level of inclusion, right? They were included, they were here. But what was missing was a deep sense of belonging. We heard time and time again how people were welcomed in the door, but once they got here, they didn't really feel like they fit in or they belonged. There was also a deep perception that the district did not have the ability to deal with issues of bias, and when they occurred, again, the perception was that it was swept under the rug or outright not dealt with. This identified for us the need to develop a systematic way to address incidents of bias within our schools, as well as the need for professional development for faculty, staff, and administration. And finally, the need to develop stronger partnerships with community organizations. This year, we're asking all 6 of our buildings to go back to basics and focus on developing a sense of belonging for everyone. This includes our faculty, our support staff, and our students. You will see the beginnings of restorative practices throughout the district. Principals and central office administrators were trained in this methodology, which reestablishes and reaffirms the essential component of belonging has to do with being a member of the community. Later today, the professional development catalog will be released. I want to highlight just a couple of options for you all. The first being we are partnering with the IDEAS organization, which is Initiatives for Developing Equity and Achievement in Students. They'll be running 2 sections of an IDEAS 1 course for teachers. It's designed to introduce you all to the complex issues raised by race and racism and their impact on student learning and achievement. The other thing that will be available are a series of workshops during our 3-part series. Again, it'll be an introduction to ideas, anti-racism and indigenous perspective, become a culturally responsive teacher, boot camp for white people for strategies in action, examining image and impact of difficult literature, race, racism in the arts, the N-word, and teaching about Native Americans. We ask you all to think critically about where you would like to engage. There is no expectation that you have to, but we are providing these opportunities for you as educators to begin a process of self-reflection to identify how you can better serve all of our students. What about next steps? Well, throughout this year, we will be working to monitor the implementation of these activities and the data analysis to come relative to the engagement in upper-level courses. We will be supporting building-based teams with both time and resources needed for the implementation of action planning. We will be continuing with our RISE Equity Improvement Cycle, which I'm going to pause on just because our keynote will address in more depth. We will continue our Courageous Conversation series with affinity groups in the district. And we'll also begin to identify and measure school culture and climate of the students, faculty and staff, families, and community. And finally, we'll be working in a concerted effort with our newly formed Human Resources Department to develop strategies to recruit and retain a diverse workforce. For this year, we will be focusing on 4 areas for deep analysis. We'll be looking at empowering rigorous content. Do all students have access to consistently rigorous curricula? In terms of school culture and climate, do all students feel connected and engaged? Do they feel safe? And do they have access to a rigorous and unbiased school discipline process? We'll also be looking at family academic engagement. Do all families feel welcome and connected to our schools? Do all families partner with their schools to meet the students' learning goals? And finally, in terms of teaching diversity and equality, we'll be asking a tough question, which is, do all students have access to educators of the same racial background? Again, these are the areas for deeper investigation. I don't have answers to them yet, but hopefully by next fall, we'll be introducing year 2 planning to address these areas. I now want to take a moment to introduce, and you'll see me over here getting her up and running on the Zoom screen, Dr. Darnisa Amante Jackson. She is a racial equity strategist, an educator, and a reverberating voice for the disenfranchised, and a true champion of the BIPOC community. A professor at Harvard University, she has been partnering with the district and has been our district's equity coach for the last year. So Darnisa, we are convened here in the high school auditorium with our entire teaching faculty, our administrative leadership, as well as our school committee. So ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Darnisa Amante Jackson.
I love to start with James Baldwin because Baldwin reminds me of something really, really important, which is non-closure. You know, equity, which we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today, is not just about race. It includes race. But just think about your own experiences in life and how many inequities we've faced, right? So today, we're going to have a conversation that includes race, but we're also going to talk about the other ways that non-belonging happens and isms show up to make adults and students not feel seen. To me, equity work is not about blaming or shaming. It's a deepening of humanity. And I don't know about you, but I feel like there's always an opportunity to deepen humanity. And so this is what Baldwin reminds me. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. From this presentation, there are going to be a ton of things that you're going to walk away with, right? You're going to want the slides, you're going to want the tools, you're going to have all these strategies, and then you're going to be sitting there thinking, how am I going to do 15, 17, 19, yes, all the prime numbers today, 15's not prime, but 15, 17, 19 numbers of strategies when in this moment, I'm trying to keep kids safe, and I want our children to reach any and all outcomes they can. So Baldwin reminds us, even if you see it all, accepting and expecting non-closure is our commitment to come back and to do something continuously every day. The one thing that I will ask for you today is to take one strategy from this presentation that you know that you can continue to be in integrity with, something that you can do over and over and over and over again. Here are our learning goals for today. We're going to spend some time talking a little bit about the work that I've been supporting in Hingham through rides. And I know that might have been queued up in my introduction, but I just want to put it up there so we all know what it is. And then we're going to spend some time actually thinking about what does it actually take to get to equity. The commissioner this year has tasked almost every leader to focus on belonging. We're going to dig into that, and we're going to get strategies of how do you create belonging with adults and with students? How does belonging show up and create spaces for powerful transformation? And then we're going to spend some time talking about ethos. Ethos for my building leaders, my district leaders, my classroom leaders. So you get the theme, everybody's a leader. Ethos is the culture you build that makes students and adults and families feel belonged to you. Okay, so we're going to learn about what non-belonging is. We're going to get some skills on how to create belonging, and then we're going to end with this culture of belonging. Okay, so just wanted to give you a frame. So as a part of my work with Hingham, we've been doing the RIDES improvement process, right? So there we have a smaller team that's been learning that work with us. And this is going to continue to be a big theme for this year. We haven't moved it out to building leaders as of yet, but I just wanted to show you a little bit more of the work that we can expect over time. So this is a cycle of improvement. A cycle is just something that you are continuously doing in order to reach improvement over time. Now, why is this important? This is a really great process to actually get to belonging or get to equity over time. And what it assumes is that in the very first step, teams have to be able to have these honest conversations about inequity, including race. Okay? The first step is actually being able to see the challenge. And this is what I'm going to help us with today. You know, oppression, all those different forms of inequity, it's a design. And the thing that it does to a lot of us is that we can't see it. It's a system that tends to function because a lot of inequities happen that we cannot see. And so step one is about building our skills as a community, as a team, to actually see different forms of inequity. And when you can see them, it allows us to cast a vision, right? To actually say, what is it that we want to do differently? But you have to be able to see it first. Once we've identified what's this key thing we want to work on, the next step is helping leaders to use data. So progress monitoring and having a culture of data is really important. You're going to learn with me today, you can measure equity. You can measure belonging. You can measure it in a qualitative and a quantitative way. So step two is all about learning the skills to collect data and then being able to interpret what are all these data telling us. Step three, we are making a diagnosis now, right? We want to get deeper into the data and ask questions about what has gone well, what hasn't gone well, because what we're saying is you should have a plan that is informed by where you've been before. Sometimes we try to solve challenges and we end up repeating the same things over and over and over again. This diagnosis stage is all about unearthing and asking deeper questions that allow us to truly impact inequity in our school communities. Step four is planning, right? So this is where we make the plan to do whatever it is that we're going to do. Step five is when we do that thing. And step six is when you reflect and you measure, and then we start all over again. Think about it like this. If equity is the big rock, you have to do all these smaller cycles to get there. So using the information that we have today, even though I know not all of you are doing the RIDES process, I just want you to have a framework to guide you if this is helpful. All of this work will be continuing with the Hingham team this year, right? And so we're continuing to build that capacity to look at data, to ask harder questions about inequity, and to ask how do we actually get there over time. Let's use this as our framing. And I want to start to define what is the difference between this work. I'm going to leave this slide up for 1 second. Some of you are taking screenshots already, okay? I can sense it. I hear the cameras clicking. I don't, but I believe it because I know I can always, this is the slide that people love to take a picture of. This is a printable. This slide can be used in multiple ways. And what we use this for is this is a roadmap to get to equity, okay? Now, it does not discount any of the work that you have done to date. It includes it, okay? So we're gonna describe, I'm the we, okay? I'm speaking in royal we. We're gonna describe what this top arrow is, and then I'm gonna get into the actual terms and what they mean and what they call us to do. When I'm done processing, I'm just going to give us a minute or two, jot down any notes, Remember, we're not just here to learn. I'm pushing you with love to take one thing. And it's hard sometimes to listen and process. And excuse me, my dog is in here. They're doing construction. So welcome to working from home, right? I want you to be able to take that one strategy. Okay, let's jump right in. This arrow at the top is a communication arrow. My principals, my superintendent, welcome, right? My assistant principals, my instructional leadership teams. This arrow is for us. You know why? I want us to think about this really important concept of loss. People do not fear change. They fear loss. And you see, every time we call our staff to do something different to get towards equity, we are actually asking people to give up something that's really important to us. Now, I don't want us to think that the loss is money, right? I know it says sense of loss increases as you get towards equity. Here's why. Equity is a beautiful thing, but a lot of times people feel like it's a wicked seesaw. A lot of times people feel like equity is taking from people who've worked really hard and giving things to people or students or whomever who have not worked as hard. And that's not true. Okay, but a lot of people feel like equity is all or nothing. It scares a lot of people because you have to give things up for everyone to get what they need. So I don't want us to think of loss as this is a bad thing, but usually the loss is, yesterday I felt like an expert, and today Dr. Amante Jackson came in here talking about some diversity, belonging's on the spectrum too. I thought it was just DEI. I don't feel expert anymore. You know, the losses that people feel are, I'm worried that if people legitimately know that I don't know some of these cultural things, that I'm gonna get canceled, that I'm gonna be shamed, and I'm gonna be blamed, and I'm gonna get written up. And we are in a world right now where it feels very scary to talk about culture. A lot of people are afraid to be imperfect. That is the kind of loss I'm talking about. Most of us never have to talk about ourselves as cultural people in school. This journey will call teachers to have to talk about ourselves with our students in ways that many of us have never been taught. To my principals, you've all had the work and the thoughts around visioning, but how many of us have ever been called to doing long-term visioning on a process that's gonna trigger loss while we're trying to reach student outcomes? You see it? You see it. And so I just want us to know that the more you ask of your staff, the more you ask of your leaders, they actually need a why. The only way to prevent people from feeling overwhelmed or afraid or scared is to empathetically communicate back with people and tell them why we're doing this work. What I'm saying is, no one moves past diversity work if leaders do not communicate why we should move. So think about it like this. Why Hingham? Why belonging? Why now? Why your building? Why this classroom? People actually need to know because people are inspired by a greater good, not a what. A what is curriculum change. A what is rides. A what is a new strategy. A what is an intervention. That does not inspire and transform people and create belonging. Whys do. Our first big nugget is if you have never communicated why we should be doing this work in ways that feel authentic to people, they are so worried about moving forward, they don't know what you are calling them to do. That's our first big nugget, is communication. The circles on this spectrum let us know the journey's not linear. okay? It's not linear. You often do diversity and belonging together. You do belonging and inclusion together, and then inclusion and equity meld into each other. You see, sometimes we think you got to go just like this. And different people in our buildings, in our classroom, in our district, and in our community are in different places in their learning. I don't want any of us to create a strategy that is so overwhelming that people can't do it, or it's so underwhelming that people won't do it. There's no such thing as whelmed, okay? I wish we could be whelmed, but we can't. So think about it as you always want to do 1 to 2 strategies at a time. All right, now let's get into the terms. Diversity is the beginning of the work. It's not the end goal. Diversity's purpose is to create a culture where we are focusing on all of the cultures in Hingham, okay? You see all of the different communities that show up in this bucket? Diversity says every single child and adult in Hingham should feel celebrated for their differences. Okay, this is deeper than race. Our neurodivergent differences, class differences, linguistic differences, country of origin differences, ability differences. Diversity says if we don't even have a culture where everybody feels seen and celebrated, it's really hard to acknowledge that marginalization is here. Diversity is the place where you actually build cultural calendars. You do icebreakers with staff so that we get to know who each other is beyond our titles. You know, we're calling people to do really hard work, and the pandemic was hard. A lot of us still don't know each other. Diversity means I'm curious about you. I'm valuing all the differences, and I know who you are beyond your role. This is diversity's purpose. This is not where you diversify staff, okay? Let me say this thoughtfully. Diversity does not mean diversification, okay? Diversification, like in terms of hiring, comes all the way over here. All the way over here. You know why? Because inclusion in absence of belonging is harm. It's tokenizing. You see, diversity is where we actually understand who we want to be to each other. It's literally icebreakers and retreats and getting to know each other and storytelling and creating cultural calendars, understanding who needs to be seen in Hingham. Belonging is the focus that the Commonwealth has asked all districts to look at this year, if you want, on the accelerated roadmap, right? Belonging is harder than diversity. Belonging says it's not enough for everyone to feel celebrated. We have to be willing, we ready? We have to be willing to have difficult conversations, not yelling, not shaming, not canceling, okay? We have to be willing to ask who in Hingham still does not feel seen. You know, a lot of times, non-belonging is not intentional. It's because something doesn't exist that students and families need. And it's usually because we don't know it needed to exist. Excuse me, 1 second. I gotta get the sweet toy. It's because we don't know usually that it didn't need to exist. Belonging, here's our magic buzzwords here, is all about relationships. Belonging says we want students and adults and families to feel in connection. Belonging is when everybody is naturally popular. Students and families do not feel like something has to change about them to be in community with you. And I'll tell you, the common denominator of being human is every single person in this room knows what it feels like to not belong. Am I right? It doesn't feel good. And when students don't feel belonged, when they don't feel celebrated, when they don't feel seen, they can't rise to any rigor or grit expectations. Students need to feel championed for and celebrated. And the only way they feel that way is when they see themselves in the curriculum when they feel celebrated in class, and when teachers do things to be relevant to what students need. That is belonging. But I'm about to throw a wrench. Okay, are we ready? I'm about to throw a wrench into this whole belonging plan. Belonging has to be created with adults first. I know. Some of y'all are looking at each other. I know. It is very hard to call teachers to create belonging when we ourselves have not yet experienced it. We actually need our teachers to feel a deep sense of connection to each other. Grade level team meetings, staff meetings, everybody's been virtual. And teachers thrive when we feel belonged to. I am telling you to do this on behalf of students. Adults need to be first. You know why? Because an adult who's never felt belonged really will struggle to empathetically create that with students. And I'm not saying we're not great teachers. I just want to be honest with my building leaders. There is work always to be done to create belonging with our staff. Inclusion. Inclusion is not interventions, it's not 504s, it's not MTS, it's not restorative practices. This inclusion is all about voice. And it says, if the same groups of people are always planning our policies, so at the school level, our curriculum, the way we teach our curriculum, our grade level team meetings, our discipline policies, okay? If the same people are always informing all of our processes, we will recreate inequity and non-belonging in a new name because we don't know what we don't know. The absence of something is still a something. The absence of knowing what a child needs in curriculum means we won't center them in it. The absence of knowing what languages families speak, for example, means we can't translate for them. They don't feel included. The absence of not having a process to include voices of all people means we usually don't include it. And inclusion says we can't be designing on behalf of families and students. We need to be designing with. Inclusion is all about student voice and student agency. It's about families who've never maybe seen themselves in Hingham's context, in its leadership, in its community support, feeling comfortable coming to planning tables with other community members, teachers, leaders in Hingham. This is not racial replacement, okay? This is not lowering expectations and standards for the diversity we want. This is actually, now that we fully understand the culture we need, we are building structures that make all people feel seen and included in them. And when you do that, that is what brings diversity to tables. You've defined the culture that people need to feel like they belong in. And then equity. Equity is about policy, y'all. It's about policy. Inequity is a design. How come we always know which students in Hingham are not going to be successful? Why do we know across all of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts what profiles of students and families are most likely to be successful? That is not a fluke, okay? And this is not to discredit the hard work of our students. I'm just saying our students and families who traditionally struggle to be included, to rise to academic occasions, it's always usually the same communities. Why is that? It is baked into a lot of policies. So equity says there are policies that exist and don't exist in your school and in our school community. And that if we don't ask harder questions about how are these policies creating ceilings on all people, equity says when you change the policies, when you remove the ceilings, people legitimately now have a fair shot. You know, equality, right? Equality is about giving everybody the same thing. There's nothing wrong with that. The challenge is Giving everybody the same thing assumes that everybody's starting in the same place. Giving everybody the same thing means that you think that if you just work really, really hard, everybody can achieve the same thing. And unfortunately, that is not true. That is not true. And there are different start points out here. And equity says true fairness means interrogating policies like our master schedules, our discipline policies, our funding formulas, our parent engagement strategies, our student engagement strategies, because who are they potentially creating ceilings on? Equity is not about lowering expectations. It's about changing policy so everybody can rise to every expectation. This is a mighty chunky slide. I'm going to give us a few minutes. If you want to turn and talk with the person next to you, remember our goal here is jot down one big thing that came up for you as you're hearing about the work. And if this is helpful, on average, going from diversity to equity can take anywhere from 6 to 10 years, okay? And it's not because we're not urgent for change. Urgency in absence of competency is harm. Each of these buckets have a lot of skills in them, okay? People actually have to learn the competencies, and that's why it takes longer. So I don't want us to think we're slowing down or we don't care. I'm just telling you thoughtfully, if you deploy really urgent people who have no skills to be urgent, they will do harm in their good intentions with that urgency, with no skills. Okay, let's slow down. And I want to frame for everybody, learning is a competency and learning is action. Okay, turn to the partner, take a minute or two, jot down what's coming up for you, and then we're going to go a little bit further. I'll leave this slide up. All right. Now, like I said, we're recording this presentation for you, so you'll have a chance to go back and watch it. But I also just wanted you to get a second. This is a mighty slide. And what I'm saying is we've been tasked this year to look at belonging, but I wanted to show us what the different skills are across the spectrum. Okay, so remember we said diversity is about creating a foundational culture where we culture. I want to be thoughtful about this. I've known a lot about Hingham's work for a few years now, so I'm not saying we haven't done it. What I'm saying is diversity is where we talk about things like values. What are our cultural values? Who are the different community members of Hingham? How do we currently know each other or not know each other? Okay, so I put our classroom skills here because the classroom skills on diversity are usually calling in student voice to do storytelling. Okay, so for students, it looks like anything that is asking a student about their lived experience, that's asking them to talk about their families, that's asking them to tell us about things that are important to them, is exactly what diversity feels like. Okay, now look at this last one. You see the why? Even for my classroom teachers, we need to communicate why we want to hear so much about our students to them. So what I often say, some of you may know or not know, but I'm a former classroom teacher. So I used to teach elementary school, 3rd and 4th grade. And so the way that I used to do this type of communication would sound like, you know, Miss Amante really loves hearing about everyone's stories, but you have a choice on what you share today. We just want to talk about things that either bring us joy or make us think about our family or something that feels important for us to know about you. You remember I told you people don't do hard things if you don't tell them why. Teachers, we also have to tell our students why. There is a legitimate power dynamic in classrooms, and students don't feel agency enough a lot of times to just come up to you and start telling you about themselves and their lives and their families. We have students who legitimately could be afraid about what you're going to do with that kind of information. They need to know as well. And then the other structures that we're creating, you remember we said you need adults to also feel and do these things as well. So think about it as staff having an opportunity to do storytelling with each other as well. Staff having a chance. This could be on Zoom. This could be in a staff meeting to just get to know each other. There are some activities that I love here, like doing identity wheels and getting students to be able to talk about the different pieces of their identities. But remember, we said belonging is even harder. Look where it starts. Belonging requires that you set up a process where we can actually get feedback. And you remember I told you earlier, you can measure DBIE. You measure belonging with student climate surveys, okay? Panorama education, I know people taking notes. Panorama education and the Qualia report, okay? So Qualia is Quaglia, and it is an indicator, 13 indicators of belonging for students, okay? So belonging is usually about feelings first. Belonging is our sweet spot. It is the thing that closes the opportunity gap. But what I'm telling you is the feelings change before test scores change. Your ability to qualitatively measure students' connections to teachers, students' connection to content, students' connection to each other is actually the thing you normally measure for the first 2 to 3 years of doing belonging work, okay? So I just want you to know the feelings change before the scores change or the enrollments change, because people want to know that they can just be themselves and be popular. Other skills that come up in belonging are the correct pronunciation of students' names. I will tell you, as a child growing up as a Darnisa, I never felt like I had any control anywhere in any space. My first 17 years of school, I was called the wrong name universally by almost all of my teachers. And you know what? It didn't make me feel welcome. It didn't make me feel like people appreciated me. And I will tell you, this is for adults too. Just your ability to keep pronouncing your students' names correctly will make them feel more seen by you. I know my name is Darnisa, but please don't call me D. We don't know each other like that. I don't even go by that nickname. I've had people make up names for me, and it doesn't feel good. And you know, for my folks who are worried that you're not that good at names, you know, people don't get upset if you keep trying. It's when you stop trying to pronounce it correctly that it makes people feel non-belonged, okay? I don't want anybody who's not great with names to be feeling guilty right now. I'm gonna tell you, just keep on trying. And it means a lot. It means a ton every time I see someone, they're like, what is it? Darnisa, yep. But I love that effort, and a lot of our students do too. Belonging work also looks like understanding our curriculum. You remember I told you the root of belonging is students feeling seen in the content. If we have not assessed our curriculum, we don't yet know. How is it making certain students and families feel seen? And how is it making other students and families not feel seen? And then inclusion. And if you notice, inclusion now, it's creating processes for collaboration. It's anything that's going to include student and family voice. It's co-planning. Now, some of us may feel like we don't even have time to plan with our grade level team. And now you hear me say we should and could one day plan with students and families. Remember, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. We don't have to do it today, but it does have to happen one day. And usually inclusion doesn't happen till year 6, all right? We have some time. I'm just foreshadowing for us having processes to include student and family voice gets us closer to globally understanding the impact of all these policies to change some of them when we get to equity. Now, here's a zoom in on belonging. I wanted to offer us a slide just about belonging itself to really explain what's going on. Okay. Now, on the left, we have this image of the instructional core. The instructional core is the most important relationship when it comes to getting to equity for students. Okay, so the instructional core is the relationship between students and their teachers and the curriculum/materials. Okay, so that's what materials is here. And the reason the opportunity gap closes, the reason all students feel seen, is when the relationships in this core change. Now look at this logic chain to the right. You remember I told you belonging starts with teachers. So I'm going to use my cursor and we're going to talk it through. Okay, so here we go. The first thing that happens is that teachers, we have to be able to model talking about ourselves. You see, it has to happen with adults first, because adults should have examples, things that we can offer to students to help them access these moments when we're talking about ourselves and our families. And a child will struggle to do that unless they see us do it first. Now most of us as teachers have been taught to not bring yourself into the classroom in that way. And what I'm telling my teachers in the room is, I'm not looking for you to lay yourselves bare for our students. What I am saying is they need to know who we are. We have to be willing to talk to them about who we are in order for them to talk back to us. And this is how it happens. Teachers start to model. Students see us modeling. Students now go back to teachers and they start talking back to us, right? Now we're in dialogue. And this can happen in a class, this could be one-to-one. And then here's what happens. We as teachers, we have new ahas. We have a different lens now to look at our content and materials. This is cultural relevance, y'all. Cultural relevance is with a deeper understanding of my students' needs. I go back and I look at curriculum and materials again to ask how my students are centered or not centered. This is not just race, neurodivergent differences, okay, multimodal approaches to teaching. Do things have to be translated, okay? This is actually asking what pieces of this curriculum or materials could make my students feel non-belonged. And then when the materials change, students now start to see themselves in a new way in the materials. That is what creates belonging. Let's do it one more time. It goes teacher modeling to students, students talking back to us because they've seen us model. We have a new lens to look at our materials and our curriculum, and then we change it, we update it, and now students feel centered and seen. This is exactly what belonging is. And you see how many different relationships have to be built? It assumes that we as teachers know how to connect with our students in all the different ways that they are different. It assumes that we as teachers can put a reflective lens on our content and materials, and that we're going to be supported by instructional leaders to do that. I always want to say this with care. The biggest challenge in school is time. There's never enough time to do everything we want. So please receive this with care, which is, if you don't make time, if we don't plan time for teachers to practice modeling, talking about our own culture, we'll never feel confident enough to talk to students in this way. Not everybody, you know? There are some teachers who naturally, but a lot of us, this is new. This is new. Like, you want me to talk about myself and my identity ooh, I'm here to do the prompt and the do now. I'm giving you the exit tickets, but that's new. So teachers actually have to have time to practice this. None of us are going to experiment on kids, you know? And nobody wants to tell a child a story that you don't know how it's going to land. Teachers also have to have time to review materials together. You know, none of this relationship changes if educators don't have time to reflect. I know my building leaders, you're in the middle of planning. And I know you often feel like, dang it, there's so many things I got to plan in here. Less is more. Even consistently doing something in a staff meeting can be the time that we need. It never feels like we're going to get more time. I'm going to encourage you. What are the structures that already exist in your building that could support teachers in practicing? And if they're already doing that in your building, bravo. And for those of us who don't get the bravo yet, I'm gonna give you a bravo, okay? We're all on the way. Let me say it this one good time. We are perfectly imperfect people doing perfectly imperfect work imperfectly. There's no such thing as perfect, okay? So I don't want you to try to show up perfect. I'm just pushing us with love to ask, how can we make time to practice? Because this is the most crucial relationship in our classrooms. And a lot of times it's very hard to make the time to just practice storytelling, to practice looking at content, to shifting content, to paying attention to how that content now impacts students, and now measuring belonging through climate surveys. That is a lot of time. And no, you don't do it all in 1 year, but I just wanted to be thoughtful about that. Now, why don't students feel like they belong? Why don't certain adults feel like they belong? There are 4 types of oppression that are happening all the time. Okay, these 4 forms of oppression are the reasons that students don't feel seen, but I wanted to make sure we knew what these 4 things were. Because a lot of times people think belonging is hokey, you know, they say, well, we don't want to spend all this time talking about culture. It's really important that we spend all this time talking about culture. These 4 forms of oppression are showing up daily and all the time. And this is the reason why some of us, even, you know, some of us in this auditorium right now may still not feel belonged. And I just want to give us the language, okay? So I'm going to tell us this story called The Fish and the Fox. And I want us to use this as a lens for how we think about the different ways that we can, you know, use this to be more empathetically connected to our students and to other adults. So here we go. There's this fox that loves fish. And he's not a appropriating fox, okay? He's not trying to eat the fish. He's not a sly fox in that way, but he's curious. And every day he goes down to this pond and he asks these fish a really important question about what it means to be a fish. And so the first day he goes down to the pond. Now, I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. Okay, this story is set in Brooklyn in 1994 for anybody who's wondering. So the fox goes down to the pond and he shouts out, "Ayo, fish!" And the fish pop their heads out of the pond and they say, "What up, fox?" And this time fox says, "How are the rocks?" And the fish say, "Well, we love the rocks, but we don't really have a purpose for them. You know, we're fish." The next week, fox goes down to the pond, he shouts out, "Hey, fish!" And this time, fox says, "How's the sun?" And the fish say, "We love the sun. It puts algae on the pond and we eat it." And this keeps going on and on and on and on. And then finally, this last day, fox realizes, if anybody's wondering, this is a fox with hands, okay? He's like a cartoon fox. He's got opposable thumbs. This is why he can snap his fingers. Somebody's always wondering about this, right? So fox goes, "I got it. There's one question I never asked these fish." He goes back down there and he shouts out, "Hey, fish!" And the fish pop their heads out and he shouts, "How's the water?" And the fish pop their head out and they look around and then they say, "What's water, Fox?" That is exactly what ideology is. Ideological oppression is the water. It's beliefs. It's the stuff that a lot of us get taught that we don't know we've been taught. Okay, now this is stuff you can only learn ideology in 3 places. Okay, education, entertainment like movies, film, radio, television, and family. And I want to be thoughtful here. I told you at the beginning of this presentation, equity is never about blaming and it's not about toxicity. And if anybody's ever had that weaponized on you, I'm sorry for that. But I care about you enough to tell you the truth. Your families, a lot of us, didn't know what they didn't know. They're not racist. You know, we've been more segregated than we've ever been before as a people. So many people only learn about different cultures on television. That's not your fault. That's how most of us learn about different cultures. But because of that, there is a lot of stuff that a lot of us have never been proximate to. And we don't know that a lot of the things that we may think about different groups or different people may not actually be true. A lot of our families taught us this water to keep us safe, not because they were bad people. You know, television tells a lot of tales about a lot of different groups of people. And if all you ever saw of a group of people was on TV, I think I might be keeping my kids or family safe too, based off of some of the things I've seen. But I just want us to know, this is where bias comes from. Like if I say a couple of words right now, we're gonna play a little game. Okay? We're gonna play a little game at the end of this presentation today. We'll come back to this one. So think about this as, this is the stuff that we don't control. It normally gets messaged to us, but it is creating a bias. Internalized oppression, if we keep on with the water analogy, this is the water that we personally swallow. This is what happens when you don't know, that you believe something that you didn't even know you believed, and then it shows up right here. And I want to be very thoughtful about this. Every single person in the whole world is biased, okay? There's nothing wrong with bias unless you try to say you don't have it. Because I know I'm biased, I can say things like, I just want to be aware of the way I'm interacting with different communities because I know I don't know what I don't know. I told you we are perfectly imperfect people doing perfectly imperfect work imperfectly. How can you always show up perfectly? How can you know everything about everybody? There are 9 billion people on this whole planet. Have you met 9 billion people? And if you haven't met all 9 billion of us, we can't say we have global understanding of everyone. It's very honest to say that I might have some biases and you just want to spend time exploring them. They don't have to be about race. Bias isn't only about race. Let me give you a straight up bias. I absolutely hate chocolate. I hate it. I hate it. I don't like it at all, okay? My favorite cookie is an oatmeal raisin cookie. I have fully internalized that. I'm never gonna be here for chocolate chips. Somebody in the audience's mouth is open. I know. Yep, look at the chocolate crew. They're laughing back there. Okay, y'all go have your Godiva, save all the salted caramel from me. I know I'm biased. So I know I'm making like a lighter example, but let's be honest, because I'm biased, I never buy chocolate chip cookies, ever. My classes hated it. They were like, Miss Amante, why do you always bring chocolate in here? Now you see that? Our example is cookies. Now imagine if this bias was about something I didn't know about a student with neurodivergent differences, that I always teach in the same exact way because I have a bias for students who can be auditory and oral processors because I'm that way. That my teaching practice tends to be biased towards my learning style, you see. It's not a race thing. It's just actually asking, am I putting limitations on my practice, on myself, who I can support? Because I may not even see what I can't see yet. Interpersonal oppression is people to people. This is what happens when the stuff that we don't know we believe, it comes out and it bites somebody. You know, it's this offhanded comment like, oh, Darnisa, I didn't think you were that smart. Why? Well, you know your people. Oh. That could be somebody's totally honest comment. And it still rips me to shreds. I get that often. I have a lot of people who make a lot of comments to me about my intelligence and about where I live and about how I present, and they don't realize it's caustic to me. You know why? They've never been proximate to my experience. They don't know it hurt me like that. I truly believe that we are all good people who don't know what we don't know. And I encourage us. Belonging starts by naming. Every single one of us at some point has created non-belonging for someone, and we didn't know it. I don't want you to feel guilty, but to own that, to me, is a great pathway to creating belonging. Institutional oppression is what happens when water becomes a policy. You see, everything we believe tends to get lodged right up in here. So now we're gonna play this game, and we're gonna end on this game. So I'm gonna say when I say, okay? When I say, and we're gonna play a game about water, okay? And then I just want you can say the answers to yourself, you can shout them out, maybe I can hear us, and then I'm gonna turn it back over to everyone else to close us out for today. And I want us to really think about this, and I thank you in advance for this time. Now, this is a little risky game, okay? So you can say it in your head. When I say ex-convict or criminal, who do you see? You can think about it. You can call it out. Who do you see? I hear some people, but it got real quiet. Okay, so in my mind, I'm imagining your answers, but you can just hear mine, okay? Did anybody see Martha Stewart? Why are we laughing though? Martha fully went to jail. Okay, I don't know her. I'm just saying, when I say ex-con, maybe a lot of us didn't necessarily think an older white woman or Martha Stewart. We might have thought something else, like our families. You might have seen maybe people of color. You might have seen like a bald-headed criminal or something if you watched The Last 48, you know? We saw different things. Next one. When I say basketball player, who do you see? Somebody think they got the game figured out. Go ahead, give me Larry Bird. Right, when I say basketball player. All right, so I'm imagining it. LeBron, Kobe, Larry. Somebody give me Spud Webb, right? Did anybody see a non-able-bodied person? Did anybody see anyone that couldn't stand? There's a documentary called Murder Ball, which is all about a non-able-bodied basketball team that is actually quite great. But a lot of us, when I say athlete, don't see people that can't stand. Last one. When I say CEO or founder or president, right? CEO, founder, president, who do you see? I hear a lot of different ones. I don't, but like in my mind, I do. I'm curious. Did anybody see me? I believe Jamie introduced me that way. Did anybody see me? Now, here's the thing. I've been leading us for the last hour, and I just asked you to tell me who you saw when you saw a CEO, president. I'm not upset, but you couldn't even see me. You see, what we just did was we played a game on the water. How can so many of us be from so many different places, but so many of us see the same thing? And I want to tell you, I was that child in the advanced placement track that nobody ever thought was supposed to be there. And nobody ever sees me when I say things like advanced placement or CEO or brilliant. And I'm not angry about it, but I am naming that that's how we, in our best intention, can make students and other adults not feel belong because we didn't even see them as the thing. We've never been taught to see certain communities, certain people, certain abilities as these things. And whether we know it or not, that slips into our planning. It slips into our classroom practice. And I want us to continue to sit in that as you think about and go forth in this year of intentional planning and creating of belonging. So thank you all so much again for this time. Thank you for playing the game with me and indulging. I'm gonna pass it back over to the Hingham leadership, and I thank you so much again for this time this morning. Thanks, everyone.
We're in great hands. Right? At this point, it is my truly distinct pleasure to welcome a very important person in our organization. He stepped in to support us, to ensure that we are safe, to ensure that we are continuing on a track of greatness. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Gary Maestas.
I don't sit well, so I'm going to stand up here, and I have a presentation for you, but Darnice's presentation made me want to change mine, but I think it ties in. So, you know, I'm honored to be here. About 5 years ago, I sat in this auditorium right around here where I was sitting today, and I kind of gravitate to what's familiar, so I sat down here today. And I sat down here about 5 years ago. And I was the chair of the NEASC visiting team that came to do the accreditation visit here 5 years ago, all right? And I remember my comments that I made to you. I have this kind of weird mind that I don't forget a lot of things. Especially auto parts, right? Like I can take an engine apart, put it back together, throw it on the floor. That's just a skill that I have. I don't forget structural things. I remember one thing distinctly that I said to this faculty. And as I've been in the school for about 2 weeks, a district for about 2.5 weeks, I believe that my comments then was not necessarily for this school alone, but for this district, okay, of what I've observed. I told the staff that you have something in this school that you can't buy, right? The culture, the willingness to be there for kids, all those bits and pieces. I said that to the staff, and you know what, today as I come up here as the interim superintendent, I kind of feel that as a district. There are so many really great things that are here. I think Darnice's presentation was compelling to me. And let me kind of tell you why. This is my family. This picture was taken last year. That's my wife, Ruby. She's an elementary principal in Carver, Massachusetts. She's been an elementary principal for about 10 years. Her building has 850 kids in it, and it's been a bear. So I've been her confidant through COVID and before. These are my 3 boys. Gary, poor kid, has my name. Martin and AJ. 3 boys. I had my son in college before I got married, so his mom and I have a great relationship still. She lives in New Mexico. He grew up in New Mexico, but moved here about 4 years ago. And this is the latest addition to our family, and his name is Benzie, and he's being trained as a therapy dog in my home from my wife's school. And it's amazing. That dog is just, it's my fourth child. you know. But this is where Darnice's presentation came and kind of hit me, right? I am not from New England. I grew up in New Mexico, in a small town north of Santa Fe called Española. And Española was settled back in 1598 by the Spanish conquistadores. Okay, so my name, it was Maestas, but all the people that settled in northern New Mexico, Española, it changed the name to Maestas. So my family came back in the 1500s to my town, all right? And it was settled in the middle of the 8 northern Indian pueblos of New Mexico. So there's a great deal of influence in my life around the Native American culture and the Spanish culture of Spain. Unbelievable influence. So the food that I eat, just like us, you know, like all of us here have that background where we kind of gravitate to that culture, right? I grew up, and I told this, and I apologize to our administrators because I kind of told a little bit of the story to them, but I grew up thinking that I just couldn't learn. I really thought I couldn't learn, and that is really something that I think I was conditioned that way. I was born premature. My brothers really babied me a lot because they all thought that I had some level of disability. And I got to school, I got held back in first grade. I won't share the story about that year. It's a little funny, but I'll save it for another day. But I realized early on that I just didn't have a lot of confidence, right? And life kind of just passed me by as a student until 7th grade. 7th grade. I did first grade twice. So all those years, there was a student in the classroom that was unrecognizable or unrecognized, right? I think I was a cute kid, I don't know. My dad used to think he was helping my mom out by cutting my hair short every day, or every haircut. My mom was a cosmetologist for almost 60 years, and she would get home and say, "What did you do to him?" You know, I would go to school and I would get made fun of because back in the 70s, long hair was in and I had short hair. And it was not comfortable for me. So it was even more marginalizing my awareness of education. It was just compounding, right? So, you know, it was just one of those things that I went all the way to 7th grade until I had a teacher, her name's Miss Hunsberger. She came to me and said, I need to work with you because your reading level isn't where it needs to be. I don't even think it was on the scale. And she worked with me for about a year, and the happiest day of my life, and I said this to our administrators, is the day that she came to me and said, "Gary, you don't need to come and see me anymore," right? Teachers change my life. And I wanted to be a teacher because I didn't want little Garys to be marginalized. I wanted them to realize their potential. So this is 33 years for me, right? I've been in this field for 33 years, and it's a twisted path. I won't share it with you today because it will take a couple hours. But I'm a college dropout. I've had unbelievable successes in college. I landed up getting my doctorate, not because I wanted people to call me Dr. Maestas, it's because I had to prove something to myself, right? So please, call me Gary, right? I'm Gary, not Dr. Maestas. That was a personal goal, and I achieved it. Matter of fact, I did my dissertation on the effectiveness of DIBELS to lower the special education rate in school systems, right? because I wanted to find out if there was an intervention for me when I was young so I could succeed earlier, right? That was my motivation. And I wanted to be an educator, but I didn't think I could do it, right? I came to New England 33 years ago. I worked at a boys' camp in Freiburg, Maine, called Camp Indian Acres for Boys. So wealthy parents would send their kids from all over the world to this camp. And I got hired to work with children there. And one of the things that was compelling for me was I had this dream early on when I really wanted to be a teacher that I was gonna come and work in the Adirondacks or somewhere and work with kids. That was kind of my dream. And I saw this job posting in the placement office of my college, the last college I went to, undergrad. And I saw the posting and I got a job in Maine. So here's this guy from New Mexico coming up all the way to Maine, never been anywhere. And I landed up finding a home there. And I worked there for 3 summers. The last summer that I was in Freiburg, I didn't have a teaching job yet. I just finished my degree, 1989. And I saw a teaching job in Longmeadow, Massachusetts, at Longmeadow High School, to start a technology education program. And I got hired, I got the job, moved out, and I'll tell you, I often say that I'm a product of that school system because they taught me how to teach. That school system is very similar to Hingham. It's probably one of the highest performing school districts in all of Western Mass or even in the Commonwealth. But it's very similar to Hingham, and it almost feels like I'm coming home when I came here. So let's talk about the opening of school. You'll get to learn about me. I'm coming to visit your schools. I'll come to visit you. I come from a little bit larger school district, and I find my way into your classrooms. I'll let your principals know when I'm coming into your schools, but I just want you to know that I'm going to be in your schools, and it's really about trying to form a relationship, trying to form some level of understanding of who I am and what I stand for. But let's talk a little bit about opening of school, all right? So this year we have the DSE mandate. I kind of wish it was earlier, and we didn't have to scramble to try to understand it. But meanwhile, the school committee worked diligently on a policy to really set direction. And I think that's one of the things that the school committee was really focused on doing, was setting that pace, setting that direction so we could actually get school going. Last week, or actually this week, I sent you on Monday, we sent a guidance document. That document will be continually updated, and we'll put more and more information for you to really understand what we're trying to do as things become available, all right? So right now, we're gonna talk a little bit about the Test and Stay program, and this is something that's really important to us in education, because last year, if a child or a staff member were close contact, you would have to quarantine. All right, the Test and Stay model is a model that we're employing. We've actually applied, and we did get accepted into the program. And we're going to be able to test in school. And we're going to keep testing, and students and staff will stay in school until they have a positive. All right, so if there's a close contact, we'll test. If the child is positive, the child that is positive will go on quarantine, but everyone else stays, and we'll keep testing. Okay, so that's the model. There's a catch. There are 2 catches, right? First is students and staff. Staff can participate as well. If you're masked, that's a positive thing. If you're unmasked and somebody tests positive, the unmasked, regardless of testing or not, you have to be removed from the equation, meaning you have to be quarantined. That's why masks were really important to the school committee and really important message from the Department of Education, because the Test and Stay model has variability based on if you're masked or not. All right, so that's something that we're working with the state on this to try to get some clarity on how the model will roll out. We'll be doing that in the days to come. The other thing that's really important is parents have to have active consent to actually be part of the model. So parents have to sign a document that says, yes, they can test and be in that model. Okay, so we're working on that. We don't have very detailed guidance yet that is forthcoming. We will add it to the guidance document that we sent out earlier this week. And that is something that I think everyone will be interested. I think parents will be somewhat interested in that information. We'll also be doing pool testing. And this is a a tiered approach in a sense. So we will keep doing pool testing similar to last year. If there is a positive test in the pool, we will then do the test and stay model to be specific on how we can isolate an individual opposed to an entire class, right? So the goal is 180 days, 5 days a week, keep kids in school. The biggest issue that we have to work with today is the mask. Okay, so that's what kind of people are really concerned about in the general public. But the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway from all of this is that we are keeping kids in school. Right? That's the goal. There is another caveat that the Department of Education has put out there, is pretty strict about it. No remote education. Okay, so it's not an option this year. I have talked to some parents about, what the school district doing when the kid goes on quarantine, if they go on quarantine. We'll deal with that. There's going to be more supports for that child. There might be some virtual supports for them, but we're not going to run full classes virtually like we did last year. Okay, that's just not something that the Department of Education wants us to do. They believe it's not equitable for our children. Okay? So we'll work through these. And I want everyone to know that my goal is to communicate with you as much as I possibly can. Not overly communicate, but communicate information that is pertinent to you. In my former school district during COVID, I would do staff meetings on Zoom. I would do that once a week. We'd do a staff meeting, and I would basically, I had about 1,500 staff in my former district. I would get about 800-900 people on a Zoom at once, and we would manage it. It went well. If we need to do that, if something comes up, I will have voluntary Zoom staff meetings so that people can actually join and we can have conversation. I can let you know something that's very important to the district, okay? I'm not, parents emailed me and I called them. Got an email yesterday from a parent, I said, she asked me several questions. I said, I want to call you. So I can review some of the questions you have. She goes, no, I want it in writing. I says, well, I'll still call you. Give your number. We're going to talk to people. That's what we do. Okay? I'm a talk through situations person. All right? So that's one of the things that I want to instill in you. Keep in mind, I don't have a lot of time with you. I have 10 months with you, but we're going to make the best of it. These are my goals for the year, is to really integrate into this school system. One of the things that I told the school committee when I was being considered for coming into this position was I wanted to become part of the community, the educational community of Hingham. I wanted to build trust. I want to build relationships. I want you to understand that I believe that I stand for integrity, and that most importantly, I need you to have a sense of predictability. I've told people for years about administration that we have to be completely consistent, like steadily consistent. We can't bounce all over the place. We have to be steady. I want you to have the sense of when I walk into a situation or a classroom or I'm speaking in public, that you know what to expect, right? I don't want you to have unknowns about the leadership that I provide, okay? I'm gonna work hard at that. It comes in connections with you and, for you to observe how I do things. And keep in mind, we have an unbelievable administrative team that support me, right? I just have the title. Everyone, I want to be walking every day with people right by me, right next to me, not behind me, right next to me. There are times that I have to step up, and I need to make sure that they don't step up with me, because I have to make certain decisions that nobody else should make, but I have to make it with their support. And I'm going to do that. I've done it for years. That's how I like to roll, okay? But you don't know that. And my goal is, I want you to feel it, I want you to trust it, I want you to realize it, okay? This year we have a lot of work. You heard it earlier about the strategic plan. Carrie talked about it. It's something that we've been working on here in the district, but we're going to push forward. It's important that this district have a relevant, current strategic plan that encompasses the future goals of the school district. And we're going to work on that. This is a monumental task, folks. It's a monumental task, but we're going to work at getting it done. I am also very, very interested and motivated to prepare the district for the next superintendent, right? And my goal is to be able to hand this over to somebody and they know what they're in for, what to expect, that we make it easy for them to transition. And we're going to be working on that. I'm going to be working with the school committee, with our administrative staff, with you, to be able to do that, right? I'm excited about that, because I want nothing more than for Hingham to be eternally successful, which you have been. You've demonstrated that. Well, how do we take it to another level, right? And that's what we're here to do. And of course, I've tried to put this purposely at the bottom, manage COVID operations, right? We don't know what's going to happen. Things can change next week, they can change 2 months from now. But I want you to know that we are going to work diligently to try to make these transitions that we're going to go for manageable, meaningful, and that you as a faculty and staff are in the loop, okay? And we're going to try to do that, all right? I don't know, and I've told Jamie this, I really honor the past. I honor the past of what's happened here in Hingham. I've learned a lot about it. I'm looking at the future, right? I'm looking at how we take all the great things that have happened, how do we embed it, but then take it to the next level, right? Because I want that success for you. And I know you want that for yourself. To have the courage and the motivation to have Darnisa deliver a message that she did today is a huge, huge statement. It's a huge statement, and it's very positive. And the thing that we have to work on this year, which people don't want to talk about, I hate talking about this, especially opening day, is we have some budget challenges in the community, and we're going to work through that. It's not a secret. COVID created a lot of difficulty in communities to be able to pay their bills. And we're going to work on that. And that's something I do typically around budget time. I'll work with principals and I'll go to your buildings and we'll do a budget presentation to you right after our budget is pretty much finalized. And I'll let you know what it means to you as a staff member, as a community member in your business. All right? So every year in my past administrative life, as a superintendent, I came up with a theme. And, I typically listen to music on my way into work. And one year in my former district, I listened to about 300 songs until I found the right song. About 300 every day. I'd listen, what's next year's theme? What's next year's theme? So I was listening you know, right after Carrie called me, I'd like you to come to Hingham, I started thinking, I got to get a song, right? I got to find this song. Well, I didn't know a whole lot about the work that Darnisa was doing with our equity team here. I didn't know a lot about it. I heard a little bit about what was happening, but not a lot. But I chose this song because it spoke to me. And I hope it speaks to you. And I think when it's, I'm gonna actually play the song for you. It's about 4 minutes. But I don't want you to look so much at the video. I want you to listen to the lyrics. Okay, I want you to listen to the lyrics because it is really important. All the work that we're doing around inclusion, equity, diversity, there's an end goal. And our theme this year is about having the ability to stand up tall and proud. Our students, so that they can stand up tall and proud anywhere, anytime, no matter what. Right? I think that's what we want for our kids. We want that for ourselves. And I think that's the underlying theme that I heard from Darnisa today. So I don't know if this is going to work. We haven't tested it. Hopefully it does. We're going to play this song. I'm going to talk about it for a little bit, and then we're going to break. Okay? We're going to break off into our teams. All right? I'm going to email you all this afternoon a link to this song. And the name of the song is Stand in the Light. And I chose this song because I want our kids to be proud to stand in the light so everyone can see them without reservation, without feeling any anxiety, without feeling any of those biases that we heard earlier. That this is who I am, take me as I am, and I'm proud. Proud. And that's what we want for our kids. And that's one of the things that I wanted to share with you is, you know, stand in the light and be seen who we are. That's one of the lyrics, phrases in the song. And I'm going to send it to you, and I hope that you absorb the lyrics a little bit as to my presentation today. But, you know, I actually met with some of our music staff. I'm not going to mention them. They're probably nervous because I asked if I could talk to them before I even got hired. Because I had this idea that I was going to have this big production, you know. I can't even get the video to play, and we're going to have this big production going here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you this video, and just listen to it. Not necessarily watch the video, but just listen to it. The singer of the song is the 2015 Voice winner, and his name's Jordan Smith, and he has a message about his own life, right? And that was it was compelling for me to learn about him, but also this song is very important because I want all of us, every single person in this school district, from the minute they walk in to the minute you retire, to feel that you belong and to feel that you can stand in the light, that you are part of that, okay? It's amazing when you're in that environment and you feel included. It spoke to me. I don't know if it'll speak to you. Isn't it true that the riskiest things we do are the hard? They're hard, right? We get nervous about it. How do we try to minimize that nervousness for our kids to stand in the light, to be seen, right? A lot of our kids, just like me in the chameleon in the classroom concept, to be hiding in the back of the room and didn't want to be seen. There's no way I wanted to be in the light. There's absolutely no way. But how do we create this enduring trait in the school district that kids, our staff, our faculty, everyone that's associated with this district is proud to stand in the light, to be seen, right? Without nervousness, that this is who I am. There's a way to do that. Compassion with a level of, you're not boastful about it, respectful, but guess what? This is me. This is who I am. This is what I bring to the table every day. Work with me, mold me. Let's mold each other together, right? So that's what I like to promote this year as a theme, is how do we encourage our population of people that walk into our buildings every day to stand in the light, to be proud of who they are, right? I think it ties in with Darnice's presentation. And I told Jamie early on, this is probably 2 weeks ago, I asked him, what's the agenda for opening day for the Convocation? And I said, you know what, I think I should probably go after Darnica, because I didn't know that it would be like this. I didn't know there would be a connection the way that I think there is, but I'm just happy that we're on the same page, right? This is my life's work, right? It's taken me years as an adult to be comfortable with telling you where I came from. Why can't our kids do that? Right? Why can't we do that? We need to be proud of our culture, proud of where we come from, proud of our struggles. It's embarrassing to talk about failing out of college, right? I don't care anymore. I really don't care, because it's part of my journey. It's part of what made me who I am, right? I'm a nut, I know. The school committee asked a question to me when I was applying for this job, and they say, what would your former staff say about you? I'm a nut, right? Because I express myself, okay? I'm not afraid. I don't want you to be afraid. I don't want our kids to be afraid. I want they need to feel that strength. And when I'm in your classrooms, I'm not there to judge, to gauge. I'm there to say hi. I'm there to see you in the light. Because in the classroom every day, that's your stage. You need to feel that light on you. Be proud, be strong. And as we close today and you go off into your meetings, I wasn't here last year, but I know your pain. I wasn't in this role last year, but I know your struggle. And it's our job at central office is to be there by your side, not physically, but emotionally, and support you, all right? I want to thank you so much for everything you did last year. Everything. I know it was hard. I know it was extremely difficult, the most difficult year you've ever had in being an educator. We've all had challenges in life, personal challenges, but professional challenges. Last year was probably the pinnacle. Our job is to bring that down. Bring that down. Consistently, compassion, relationship. You might say that these are buzzwords. They might say that, he's saying that because that's the right thing to say. You will find out. You will find out that this is what we believe, and that's how we're going to move forward. I want to highlight one group that's in this audience that probably you all had a big task to accomplish last year, but I want to highlight our school nurses that are in here today. And I believe last year, I'm just getting my bearings, so I know Deb. Is Deb here? I'd like to highlight Deb and her work last year for leading the nurses. Unbelievable. I've heard that you've done a remarkable job. I want to highlight you because I want to thank you for everything that you did to kind of keep things at that level, okay? Calm and move forward. All right, you've had enough of me. And now we're going to move on to the next phase of the day, which is department meetings. And I want to highlight that the Special Education Department Student Services, we're going to actually move you from the designated room into the cafeteria. Okay, so please meet in the cafeteria. And really, honestly, have a great year. Let's make this a great year, okay? We deserve it. The kids deserve it. Have a great year, everybody. Thank you.